How's it going, everybody? Ragaroth here. So this is kind of my third entry in the why we need to support insert game here kind of series. I've done it with Bleach, I've done it with Sonic, kind of more established IPs with developers that have, I guess, more experience making games. This one's a little different though, because this is with a game that is a totally new IP, and with a studio, this is going to be their first game, or at least I guess their first big game, and that is Lost Soul Aside. You know, if you've seen me kind of recent videos, I've been getting more excited about this game. More news is coming out. It's pretty close, at least provided it doesn't get delayed again. So I kind of want to do this video talking about kind of why I think we do need to support it, despite maybe some concerning things we're hearing. Regarding concerning things, I did want to talk about some of the previews that came from, I think, China Joy, and I believe whatever the event was last week. I'm not entirely familiar with these conventions and events, so forgive me for seeming ignorant. So I know general previews from the game. I don't have any kind of written source or posted source. These are just what I've heard other YouTubers say. They've heard from people. And I think previews have been saying that, like, generally the game is fun. I think the complaints were mainly that sometimes, I guess, the huge amount of particles and effects going on can be a little distracting, like you can't entirely see your character. I think also, too, that some of the hits kind of lacked impact. And I think this is probably the biggest one, was that, you know, the game has performance mode and quality mode. I think quality mode, it does dip under 60 frames and isn't even a steady 30 frames. And I think in performance, I think either that the backgrounds get blurry or it still isn't even a constant 60 frames, which is a little bit of a bummer if true. Hopefully those are things that can be ironed out. I think those are problems that I think maybe FF16... No, FF16 I think didn't really have that problem. It would just be 30 frames if you were kind of just exploring around, and then if you got into combat, it would go to 60 frames. I'm thinking of probably like Jedi Fallen Order, where I think, you know, that game had some problems even in performance mode, where it can stay at 60 frames, which was a little bit of a bummer. I do have to get back to that game though, because I did like what I played. None of these concerns are like world breaking. Maybe like the performance thing is a bit of a bummer, especially for a game like this. You know, 60 frames is kind of a big deal for like games, or steady frame rate I should say, is a big deal for hack and slash games like this, especially with just how fast it is. Then I guess the more concerning one, but I feel like from a source that like people aren't that crazy about the person, or maybe they're not that reliable. This is kind of the big one that I think is sort of, I guess, made headlines, if you want to call it that. It's from someone named Lunatic Ignis. So they said there are a lot of concerns about Lost Soul Aside. I had the occasion to play the game alongside various Chinese journalists and content creators, and there are some things that we learned about. Okay, we only played the first chapter in the demo, about 2 hours with multiple boss battles. Not really much to say there. Yang being confirmed, it is double A game. This was kind of a controversial one, because I guess first of all, we probably all thought that it was a triple A game for a while, first of all, and then secondly, I think also because the game is priced at $60, which is, I guess, considered a bit higher than the AA game price. Now, I actually thought it kind of made sense, because I was kind of wondering why the game, not that I'm complaining about it being cheaper, why it wasn't like $70. And we have seen some games recently becoming $80 as well, so AAA games. So I actually figured this lined up, but then I know the common example is people bring up the Expedition 33, which I believe is a AA game, and that's $50. So I don't know, maybe this is a case of it just being a higher end AA game. Maybe the prices have been shifting recently so much that it's the new AA game price, which I know kind of sucks. Or it's simply because Sony is the one that prices these out, and they, you know, I guess because they're funding it, they wanted to make it a little more expensive, which is lame, but, you know, are we really that surprised these days? Next point is they want to aim for a Souls-like as their next title. So this is kind of a bummer for a lot of people, because I think it's a pretty common belief that Souls-like games are kind of getting a little played out. People are getting kind of tired of them. I will say, like, I am kind of getting tired of them myself. I've never hated them. They've never been my favorite genre. I'm personally way more into, you know, hack and slash games like Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, and Ninja Gaiden, rather than like Demon Souls, Elden Ring, etc. And like, not say I don't like those games. It just, I will take a hack and slash game any day over them. It's probably one of my favorite genres. I would actually have probably covered this genre a lot more on my channel. It's just that really, I guess during the time I made my channel, really the only big ones were like Devil May Cry 5, which was a really big one, Bayonetta 3, and now, if you've noticed, I've been covering Ninja Gaiden 4, And, you know, now, of course, we got Darksiders 4 coming as well, provided that, I guess Darksiders qualifies as a hack and slash game. I know those games kind of dip in genre, but I think it's a bit of a bummer because this is like a big hack and slash game, and it's kind of discouraging to see, like, this developer want to just kind of play it safe and kind of go the more overplayed route after this. And, you know, in mind, this game has been kind of in development for a while. Well, actually... The next point kind of negates that, but I guess I should say it's been a concept for a while. So maybe, like, this has just been on Yang Bing's mind for a while. And things could change with how well this game does, from the reception, and, you know, maybe it'll change, or I don't know, maybe they'll revisit the genre after the Souls-like game. But I think we can most of us can agree that it's kind of getting a little played out. And, it, you know, I think it's the time for the hack and slash renaissance, and they should focus more on that. The development truly started in mid-2021. That's when they decided what type of game it'll be. That might also explain why we've the game has been so absent for a while, and it's kind of shifted a lot in focus and certain things over time. But I guess that also sets the expectation, like, you know, that things have changed and have been altered, and the game hasn't been consistently worked on for like, what? Because it came out as a thing in like 2014, 2015 maybe. Making this game is very difficult for Yang Bing, destroying his health. That's really a shame to hear. I hope he's doing better, and I hope for his future projects he doesn't have to hurt himself. And, you know, again, this is if this is even true or not exaggerated, but let's assume it. We'll just assume it's true. A shame regardless. I'm glad, though, he's going to get to release his game, though. There are about 120 minutes of cutscenes in the entire game. It's funny because I've heard some people say, like, oh, wow, that sounds really long. And I've heard other people say, oh, that sounds really short. So I'm not really sure. I guess, like... Can we look up? All right, let's use Devil May Cry 5 as an example, since that's a similar genre. Is there just a movie of all Devil May... So Devil May Cry 5, game, movie, all cutscenes. That's 2 hours and 13 minutes. Okay, that's actually just a little under DMC5. That's funny. I didn't realize DMC5 had that many cutscenes. So I mean, that's not short. I guess that's kind of average, I guess. I feel like this is... I don't know if this is going to be a really cutscene-heavy game anyway. Then, the real problem about this game is that it doesn't stand up for itself. At times, it feels very cheap with animations and combat. So this is the weird... Well, one of the weird ones. I don't really know what the person's saying here. Combat, I think for the most part, the combat looks absolutely amazing. I just don't really see much to hate here. I guess maybe like some audio things, maybe like some little animations here and there. Sure, it's not, you know, there's a little bit of cheapness I could see. I know, like, maybe in some of the cutscenes, some of the characters look stiff. Like, when this character, I forget her name, I think she's like the love interest, I believe, or the female companion. When she kind of drops down like this, like, I guess just her expression, her movement, it does look a little lifeless. And I think there's a couple other cutscenes, like when Kaiser just kind of, like, looks up here. It looks maybe a little, like, I guess a little lifeless, I guess. And I don't know, man. And tell me if I'm being nitpicky, you know, again, because I'm not a very, you know, I generally let a lot of things slide. So, like, I'm being very hypercritical of these things. But, like, tell me if I'm being nitpicky with those cutscenes and that they actually do look, you know, really good animated. Those are the only instances of kind of cheapness I can see. And maybe, again, some of the audio hits and registering things like that. I think that's a little harsh, though. At least from what I'm seeing. Again, this person played a bit more, so I can't really comment. The next is, most of us don't think the game will be a general success because of the AAA price, even though the Chinese gamers are intrigued in it. And, like, the thing is, $60 again isn't really a AAA price anymore. That's what games cost, like, back on, like, the PS3 and 360 usually. I mean, look, it would be great, obviously, if it was $50. I'm not gonna complain about something being cheaper. But again, it's not really a full-priced game now. I mean, I think, like, Hunter x Hunter Nin Impact is $60. And I would say this looks a lot better than that. So, and I mean, maybe it'll do well in China better than America. I mean, I think it doesn't help it's kind of sandwiched with a lot of games also, like Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta, Shinobi Art of Vengeance, Borderlands 4 is pretty close to it. So, that might not help it. But I feel like just because it's been so anticipated for a while and hack and slash games are making a comeback, if it's critically well received, maybe that'll kind of attract other people. Like, I didn't know what the hell Expedition 33 was until after it came out and people were freaking out about it. Now I'm kind of interested in trying it out. Alright, then this is probably the strangest one. The game is more of a Final Fantasy VII remake than DMC5. You even have a town similar to it with a bunch of shops and NPCs. Now, like, I don't see that much with the combat at all. I guess the towns, sure. I mean, the only thing, I guess, now that we've seen the weapon trailer, like, the way it kind of freezes time a little bit to switch to what weapon you want to use does kind of make it seem like something that, like, seem like certain things that were in FF7 Remake and Rebirth. But I don't think that makes the whole game like FF7 Remake. And even if it was, like, ooh, that's not the worst thing. Like, FF7 Remake and Rebirth are generally considered pretty good games. The main complaints people have with them is just that it changes the Final Fantasy VII story up so much, and that some people prefer turn-based over action RPG, but most people don't mind the actual gameplay. And, I mean, I personally think, and I like FF7 Remake and Rebirth, I personally think the combat looks a lot better than that, but, you know, I don't know. That's, I think, the weirdest one that this guy has said. And I don't know if, like, the towns and NPCs make it automatically like it either, but I don't know. I think it's just a weirdly worded point. I think that's the problem there. And that's really it. And that's what I think kind of caused a lot of people to kind of get worried about the game. And it admittedly kind of got me a little worried too. And I don't know if this, we don't really know if this person's right or not, or what, you know, it's just one person's opinion too. Especially because I feel like the other previews or receptions have been a little bit more positive. Why should we support this game? I think it's less so for the IP. I would ideally like this IP to at least be a thing. Maybe we'd get a few games, at least from what I'm seeing. But I think it's more for the genre, because again, I think most have been noticed that hack and slash is making a comeback with Ninja Gaiden 4, this game, Darksiders 4, Tides of Annihilation. That game looks incredible as well. I think there's one or two others that I haven't exactly played or been interested in, but I know that have caught people's eyes. If this game kind of does well and people support it, I think it'll kind of encourage more developers to make hack and slash games. And again, it would also maybe, like, if a lot of you don't want Ulti Zero's or Yang Bang's next game to be a Souls-like, if this game does well, maybe they'll be like, oh, maybe we should, you know, put aside the Souls-like game and kind of focus on Lost Soul aside. I guess for me, the reason this game is kind of important is because one of my most anticipated games for the longest time was Final Fantasy Versus 13, which then became Final Fantasy 15. I was always interested in it because I love Kingdom Hearts, but I always wanted a game with a kind of Kingdom Hearts feel, but with a much more kind of darker atmosphere and with a much cooler protagonist. And Noctis kind of was that answer. You know, I've never really cared that much for Sora, but I always still loved Kingdom Hearts. Something that was like just kind of all Final Fantasy, rather than, you know, like felt like Kingdom Hearts, but all Final Fantasy. And Final Fantasy Versus 13 kind of seemed like that answer. And then it kind of got rebranded Final Fantasy 15, and Noctis changed. I feel like the atmosphere of the game changed, and I feel like the combat changed as well. And look, I like Final Fantasy 15. I don't hate the game. And Noctis is probably my favorite Final Fantasy protagonist. However, I personally preferred his Versus 13 design. I like the atmosphere that Versus kind of implied. And I think I just like the way the combat looked. It looked way more like floaty and crazy and Devil May Cry kind of action-ish. Final Fantasy 15, I don't want to say it's grounded, but it's more, I guess, like heavier or stiff. And I didn't care for that much. Obviously, it was a little better playing it when it was like 60 frames per second on like the PS5. That definitely helped. But even still, like, Lost Soul aside, feels like it's trying to kind of be, feels like it wants to scratch that FF Versus 13 itch that a lot of people didn't really get to scratch. And that's why I'm so excited for it. I mean, Kaiser, he looks so much like Noctis. Again, he's like a fusion of Noctis with like Dante and Virgil. That is a badass combination right there. So that's why, like, I want this game to succeed. I want it to do well. You know, it might not be like a Game of the Year nominee. That's okay. I just want it to kind of have a presence, kind of help invigorate the hack and slash genre. Maybe become an IP of at least a couple games or something like that. Maybe get some DLC. I'm not sure. I feel like hack and slash games never get that much DLC or, you know, support, which is a bit of a bummer, admittedly. But maybe that could change. I don't know. I mean, what I'm hoping is that the game, like, even if it doesn't sell well initially, maybe it'll do well enough that it'll kind of spread through word of mouth and more people will try it out. It'll be kind of like a sleeper kind of hit. But I mean, I was honestly way more encouraged after seeing the weapons trailer and kind of that 10-minute gameplay demo showcase against the one boss with the staff. Admittedly, I know the boss fight kind of ran kind of long. That was sort of a complaint. I never want to tell you what to do with your money. If you're not interested in the game, or if you don't think the game is looking good, you know, by all means, don't buy it. I'm just trying to kind of encourage and maybe show a light and maybe to try to give some grace. And admittedly, this is, I think, another bonus reason, but like this game was like a passion project. And funnily enough, Yang Bing has basically said that, you know, he wanted to work on this game because he was tired of waiting for Final Fantasy Versus 13, so it was kind of a fine, I'll do it myself kind of instance. And I do want to encourage that. I mean, I'm one of those type of people that I don't really care what the context of the game is, who's making it, or whatever like that. If I'm interested in it, I'm interested in it. But I think it is a bonus in this. Like, this is this studio's first game, and it would be great to kind of like see them flourish and actually become kind of a force to be reckoned with. It's more of an icing on the cake thing. Obviously, if the game isn't good, the game isn't good. But it is at least something that I think consider kind of what the future could hold. Even if it's not the best game, there could be a lot of potential there. I feel like it's kind of like a Gotham Knights situation, though that's probably a bad comparison because I know a lot of people don't like Gotham Knights. Probably even, I would say, better, though, because I think this is their first game, period, unlike Gotham Knights, whereas technically their second. So yeah, just something to consider as well, to kind of maybe be a little more. But again, I totally get it if the game is just not your cup of tea, or if you're just not liking what you're seeing, or not liking what you're hearing. I mean, I don't really understand how you cannot like what you're seeing. I think what we're actually seeing looks great, but obviously I get that seeing is different from actually playing, and some of these people could have access to things that we haven't seen yet, and maybe that part or those parts of the game don't look as good. I'm not sure. I'm kind of just going at face value what I'm seeing. But like, that's really it for this video. I hope my points make sense. I hope you understand what I'm saying. And I know this argument probably isn't as strong as like my one for like Sonic Racing and also Bleach, because again, it's totally new IP. I'm kind of gambling with this one a little bit more because we don't know as much what we're in for. But yeah, I mean, the whole game has been very nebulous, I feel like, since the start. But yeah, I think that's really it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you'll be getting the game, if you don't want to get the game, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And of course, like the video, dislike it, definitely subscribe if you haven't already. Would really help the channel out a lot. With that being said, thank you so much for checking out the video, and another time, another place. Keep being awesome.